Have you ever sat down to paint and felt nothing? Or you feel resistance almost immediately, so you put off painting for another time? Not because you don't want to paint, but because something inside you resists starting. Maybe you used to love it and now it feels heavy, or you feel nothing. If that's happening, I want to say this clearly. This isn't laziness, and it's not a lack of discipline. Something else is going on, and we're going to talk about that in today's video. First, I would just like to say hello and welcome. I'm Janet, architect turned creative renewal coach and watercolor artist. I support mid to late career creative souls who are rebuilding their relationship with creativity after burnout, depletion, or time away. And this video is part of my starter series, meant for the stage before rebuilding momentum, where simply beginning feels like a huge barrier. I've also created a companion blog with additional reflections for each video. You'll find the link in the description. And if you're starting to recognize yourself in this pattern, you're in exactly the right place. I've linked a free creative confidence reflection guide below, along with links to the North Star mini reset, for when you're ready for something gentle, structured support alongside these reflections. So, if this isn't laziness and it's not a lack of discipline, what is it? People describe this feeling of resistance to starting in different ways. Feeling stuck, avoiding it, putting it off, or just not knowing where to begin. I call this emotional friction. Sometimes it shows up as resistance, but underneath that, there's usually something heavier. Emotional friction often comes from things like pressure, when the voice inside you says, I should be further along by now. Or perfectionism, when it's fearfully whispering, what if it's not good enough? Or guilt or shame, when it's scolding, I should have kept going. Or I'd be so much further ahead if I hadn't stopped. Or identity loss, when you question, am I still an artist? Or was I ever a real one? So when you sit down to paint, you're not just trying to pick up a brush again. You're carrying all of that mental weight, that mental baggage with you. So of course it feels difficult to begin. So here's the part I want to say clearly. When creative return feels heavy, it's usually not because you've lost your discipline. It's because the emotional and identity load around creating has increased over time. So starting again isn't just an action. You're trying to return to find a part of yourself again. This is especially true if you've been away for a while, because this isn't only about trying to relearn skills that might have become a bit rusty. As anyone who has actually tried to ride a bike again after 20 or 30 years will know, the old saying isn't exactly true. But this is also about reconnecting to a part of yourself that now feels uncertain, or exposed, or fragile. Or maybe you worry that you've lost your creative spark forever. So instead of asking, why can't I just start? Ask something more honest. What feels heavy about starting right now? Sit with the answers that come to you honestly, not to fix, just to see clearly, because clarity reduces friction. When there's emotional friction, pushing harder doesn't work. What helps is reducing the activation energy, lowering the barrier to entry. So here's a simple exercise to begin again. A 3-object still life using things that are already around you. Choose one useful object, something you use every day. A mug, glasses, notebook, a pen. Choose one meaningful object, something with memory or sentiment for you. And choose one ordinary object, something neutral, A spoon, a piece of fruit, a roll of tape, a rock, your shoe. Place them down without adjusting or arranging them afterwards. This is the important part. Do not compose it. Do not fix it. And do not try to make it perfect. Just place the objects down and begin to sketch. So how does this exercise work? This might seem very simple, but it's doing something very specific. It quietly removes one of the biggest sources of resistance, decision pressure. What should I draw? You don't have to choose a subject. You don't have to design anything. You don't have to make it meaningful because it already is. And when decision making drops, resistance drops with it. So instead of performing or proving something, you're simply observing and responding. This is what I mean when I say creativity doesn't need more effort, it needs conditions where it's easier to return. And that's where painting begins again. As we begin, just notice what's in front of you. No pressure, no expectations. I'll be sharing the full sketch as a companion video later this week. You'll find the link here if you're watching later on. So let's begin. I hope you enjoyed that time because sometimes this is all a creative practice needs to be. Once again, if you'd like more time with this practice, please join me in the full sketch companion video. I've also written a companion blog for a slower reflection on this idea. And if these conversations resonate, my mailing list is where I share longer reflections and gentle guidance. All of those links are in the description. If it still feels hard to start, that doesn't mean you're failing. It means something in your system is asking for less pressure and safer conditions. And that's something we work with, not against. You're not behind, you're at the beginning again. And beginnings require different conditions than momentum. If you try this exercise, notice how it feels to begin, not how it turns out. Because learning to return this way without pressure, without performance, is what makes creativity sustainable. Until next time, wishing you a grace-filled day. And I hope you find a few moments this week to listen for what's already there and to fuel your creative spark.